You hear me?
Hey, all right. We're golden.
That was a fiasco, but we're good.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we're jumping right into this. John, thank you very much for taking the time. So, for all my people that were patiently waiting out there, got to do my quick intro really quick, and then we're gonna get diving right into our live show tonight here with special guest Mr. John Devaney. So let me cue up my whistle talk introductions, and then we'll get rocking and rolling. Thank you for your patience, all.
Are you a football fan? Have you ever found yourself wondering, what in the world was that ref thinking? Well, Mike D, the referee, is here to help you. Join me on Whistle Talk as I talk to professionals on the field and in the booth to help you understand what is going on inside the mind of a football official.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Whistle Talk. This is Mike D, the referee, and as you can all see, I got Mr. John Devaney joining me tonight. But before John and I dive into our topic here tonight, please, if you are enjoying the show, hit those like and subscribe buttons on whatever podcast platform you may be listening to or watching tonight. If you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. All those fun things are for free. And one last thing that I would love to throw out there for anybody and everybody, if you're enjoying the show and you want to kind of support the cause a little bit, I've got my Buy Me a Beer website, Buy Me a Coffee, it states here, but when you click it, it says Buy Me a Beer. So if you want to help out a little bit as I'm drinking my Miller Lite tonight, John, cheers. Welcome aboard.
Thanks,
I'm
man.
going to hide that, get rid of that. So, John, one quick request. It's actually on my end asking if you could turn your phone sideways. John was having some technical difficulties with his computers, Chrome more so. But John, it says if you go in portrait orientation or horizontal orientation, it should flip, or else we'll just look at you like this from now on.
Like
Let's
that?
see. Is it going to flip? Nope, it didn't switch. All right, we're going with it the other way. That works.
Yeah, all right.
So, John, welcome. Welcome to Whistle Talk, bud. How are you?
I'm great, Mike. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, ladies and gentlemen that are out there, I invited John on the show tonight. And for those of you that may have been following on Facebook, I kind of posted a question out there, being an umpire myself, basically about umpires positioning. And the reason I brought John in, John and I have known each other for a while. John's part of the same association that I am here in New Jersey. John unfortunately experienced the things that I've been talking about trying to prevent. And the purpose for tonight's show and the reason that I wanted to go live, and I've got the chat board pulled up here, is I wanted some input. And the opinions that John and I bring to the table are not gold. They're not anything set, but they're nothing but opinions. So we're just looking to open up some conversation here and talk about the overall safety in football, and we're going to dive a little bit specific into the umpire, but just the overall safety in football. One thing that I know with the NFHS and everything like that is all the stress, and it should be, is on the safety of the athletes. Well, I want to kind of bring to light a little bit of the safety to us, the people, the third team, as I like to refer to us out on the field. So, with my spiel being done, I'm going to pass the buck over to John. John, do me a favor. Why don't you introduce yourself to all of the loyal listeners that are out there? Just give them a little bit of a background of your officiating career.
Yeah, sure, Mike. So, I started officiating just about a decade ago, and I do three sports, and I'm just picking up a fourth now. I do a little bit of basketball, but I am a volleyball, football, and I do girls lacrosse. Where I am in that chapter, the cadet trainer. And I pretty much officiate all year round, 52 weeks a year. And I really enjoy it. And I'm very serious about it. And I'm always looking to, be the best I can in every way that I can. I really, really enjoy being an official.
God bless you for doing 4 sports now. I knew about the 3. I didn't realize about the 4th. So good for you, staying active. I love it.
Yep.
So John and I actually got to know each other. John was a cadet. John happened to be a cadet for my first ever game, varsity game out on the field. So John and I kind of was picking his brain because it was my first game out playing center field as a back judge. Being an old offensive lineman was a little bit unique for me, but it just it goes to show I just enjoy the football aspect and just being out on the field. So John and I have known each other for the tenure of basically my career and vice versa. And John has now transitioned. You're now a deep wing again. Transitioned from a deep wing to an umpire back to a deep wing. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, you're correct. So I started out the first few years as a deep wing and started doing some umpire. Thought that's what I wanted to do. Absolutely loved it in there. Um, really, really enjoyed it, and really felt like more of a part of the game. And I decided, you know what? After doing it for about a season and on a crew, I decided that's what I wanted to do. And the last game that I did at Umpire was when I had my incident, and what it was I was run into, and I had broke my tibia, tore my MCL, and unfortunately, that's how I was getting into basketball at that time, and unfortunately, that winter I was laid up for over 2 months. I was off my feet, and it was a long road back. Um, to get back on the field and do what I love. I missed a lot of games, a lot of work. It cost me a lot of money, and it actually gave me a lot of information that hopefully tonight, I can enlighten some people and let you know that, you know what, for most of us, this is our passion. This is what we love to do.
Correct.
But we're not supporting our families. It's not our job. Unfortunately, you get hurt, and it can really throw a monkey wrench into your life. And until it happened to me, and listen, I've never been hurt. I've never broken a bone or tore a ligament. I've always been in very good shape and very physically active. Never thought that it was going to happen to me. And to be honest, when it did, it made me realize my insurance situation. I have a major insurance company through work, and they weren't going to cover this. They didn't cover it. My personal insurance would not cover something like this because it happened on the field, where I was being paid by somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And I've talked to a few officials, and I know that that's not always the case, but it's something to think about. And then the other thing is, you're going to go through NFHS, as with your chapter dues that go to your state. But I can tell you, in the end, it worked out. But it took me years to get the bills paid, and then chasing people around. And to be honest, the people at NFHS were very, very, very good to me. Like, they tried really hard, or that's the way it appeared. But their insurance company, and they had their insurance company at the time was K&K. Very
Okay.
difficult to deal with. Very, very difficult to deal with. But it took a
In
lot of work
essence,
on my end.
it comes down to almost like a workman's comp type of scenario. And I know on the Facebook chat group, some people were asking me, and here in New Jersey, we're technically subcontractors. So we're working outside of our normal jobs, like you mentioned. So the school that this happened at wasn't going to cover you because you were a subcontractor, and it's the same thing. And there are subsidiary type of insurance companies that could help alleviate some of it, but like you said, you had to kind of jump through some hoops in order for you to get reimbursed for what you had lost. And I know, again, we're talking right now specifically about the umpire position, but this is any position on the field. This is your deep wings, your short wings, the referee, no matter where you are, something like this can happen. John, I don't. I told you kind of a little bit earlier when we were chatting. I was able to go back and pull up the film of John's incident. So if you don't mind me showing it to the viewers out there, we actually have two angles of it, both the sideline angle and the end zone view of this incident that happened to John. So we'll start with the wide angle here. And
Get your
John, if
popcorn, folks.
you want to kind of talk the listeners through, this is John here about the 35-yard line.
So this play, and I was always, like anybody in our mechanics manuals taught 8 to 10 yards off, 8 to 10 yards off. I'm not a big guy. I'm about 5'10", but I have a I'm pretty agile, and I figured, 10 yards off, no problem. And I was never more than 8 to 10 yards, and you can see there I was about 10 yards, and I I opened up and I turned, and unfortunately there was nowhere to go. I got sandwiched. I tried to hold my ground, which in the end maybe was a mistake. But as we all know, you don't have time to think when something like this is going to happen. Um, and I was hit from my left side onto my thigh. A player is driven back into me, and as I go to the ground and I'm on the ground, a passing player, to add insult to injury, kicked me in the top of the head, and
Oh goodness.
really, yeah, really messed my head up. I had I still have the scar from it and quite a bit of blood. But you know, I mean, I think my position is pretty valid. Not and unfortunately, when this happens to you, like anything in life, you say, "What can I have done better?
Yep.
What did I do wrong?" And in the end, you look at these films and you say to yourself, "It's just the nature of the beast." I think.
Yep. So I've got pulled up here for the people that are listening at home. We just watched the sideline view, and now I've got the end zone view. And mechanically wise, and I know it differs in state to state, you're working a six-man mechanic game here. So our referee is to the offensive backfield's right side, and that is a mechanic that changed in the last 4 or 5 years. We used to always be, as a white hat, we used to always be to the quarterback's throwing hand side. Now they made it that the R is always going to be on the right side of the offense, and their focal point, initial key, is going to be the right tackle that's here for a quick hold, and then they're focusing on the quarterback, righty or lefty, doesn't matter. And you now are kind of at a diagonal with the referee, so that you can kind of keep everything triangulated in and keep everything in your line of sight. From the sideline view, your depth was fine. And I know, again, when you and I were just talking about this a couple of days ago, you had asked me, did I think that your positioning was well? Everything that you're doing here is by our mechanics book, of how you're set up. So I'm going to let the end zone view play through. And so you got a veer option team, you clear out, and just the body comes flying in. And then there's the player lying next to you. So, I mean, it's a freak play, but it is something that does unfortunately happen. Now, John, one thing I do want all the listeners to listen to also is John stayed in the game for a couple more plays after that. And for those that were able to watch it, that was a pretty rough shot that he took there. Um, Talk to us about what your initial thought process was.
So my initial thought process is that I had no idea. I thought I popped right up, and
Mm-hmm.
that wasn't the case. When I got up, or when I actually looked up, my R was looking down at me, and I believe there was somebody from the school looking down at me as well. So there was enough time had gone by, and everybody came in and checked on me, and I said, "Nope, I'm getting up and I'm good to go." And I thought I was, and I stayed in. I got down to the goal line. I did the extra point. I did the kickoff, and then I would say probably in maybe first or second down, People first down were telling me get out of the game. This must have been pretty obvious, but by the end of the second down, my knee had swollen up so bad that I could not walk, and I went to the sideline, and the rest is history. Unfortunately, I could tell you that you know I did not walk. I could not walk or bear weight for about three weeks. I just couldn't do anything at all, which leads us back to how does that affect your personal life?
Yeah, I mean, you work a job. We're not all full-time officials like the gentlemen and ladies that we see on Sunday afternoons at 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock and Monday Night Football and things like that, where you're working a full-time job. And I'm a teacher myself, so being on my feet is part of my daily routine. So it's just something that we have to do. I was able to pull up some statistics here just about injuries in officiating. And it talks about the injury incident rate this actually goes across a number of different sports, including lacrosse, soccer, football, different things like that. But it says that there's approximately 15 injuries per 1,000 hours of exposure of field time. Now, if you're thinking about, okay, football game, 2.5, maybe at the most 3 hours a game. So the 1,000 hours, it's going to take a while to get there. But then it starts talking about the lower leg injuries are 30% of the injuries that are occurring. And it's not just these serious and significant injury that you dealt with, John, but it's the pulled muscles. It's the different things like that. Excuse me. And then it goes on to talk about how us being high school officials, our average age is in the 50s for the high school official across the country. And I think that's something that plays a major part in it too, is I joked about it, an episode that's coming out tomorrow. And for those that are watching us live, this one will be dropped on our platform next Wednesday, but it's live tonight. But the episode that's dropping tomorrow, we're talking about officials' fitness. The joke was, and I go back to the movies, they keep saying the same age, but we keep getting older and older. I know I messed up Matthew McConaughey's line there. I apologize, but it's a fact of life. If these kids are getting bigger, faster, stronger, and they're still staying the high school age, where we're just getting older and older, and average age of 53, we're already in a significant injury range already, for the most part. So that's why we're looking to try to get newer, younger officials that are out there, some fresh blood out there. I probably shouldn't say blood if we're talking about injuries tonight, but some new faces that are out there to get involved in the sport.
So they're 18 forever, right? They're 18 forever.
And those 18-year-olds, some of them are bigger than grown ass men at 18 years old. So now the thing that one of the big bones of contention that we have going on right now is the discussion about the umpire going from the defensive side of the field to the offensive side of the field. And I've had on a previous guest. I had on in a state where they have already fully transitioned to that. Here in New Jersey, we have not. And I've talked to a couple people at the state level, and it doesn't look like it's going to happen anytime soon. But it is something that I'm going to push for it. But I do have some pros and some cons for it. And this is where I do get a lot of pushback from it. John, your opinion on it. What's your thought process on where the U should stand?
Well, here's my thought process, and I'm a guy that's done most of all the positions on the field quite a bit, and so I'm primarily an FJ. I'm a back judge, and we teach people, and in all sports I do, we teach officials how to be safe, and we teach back judges to stay off the pylon and goal line plays, and we teach short wings, to trail the play, let the play go by, and you know what? There's really not anything we can do to make those positions safer, in my opinion. They're off the field positions, but there is something that can be done with the umpire. We can put the umpire into the backfield, and let's face it, we're about making the game safe. That's our number one priority here. We don't want to see injuries, and I honestly feel that it should be no different for the officials.
Mm-hmm.
This is, in my opinion, for what my humble opinion, this is an easy change with. And I'm not saying there's not downsides to putting the umpire into the backfield. There's pros and cons to everything. But paramount should be the officials who need to go home that night and take care of their families. I mean, at least that's my opinion.
And that's an opinion that I do share with you. And the one argument that I continually have, and you just mentioned it, our mechanics manual here in New Jersey. And again, I understand there's 5-man mechanics, there's 6-man mechanics. The NFHS rules are the NFHS rules. So they're governing 48 of the states in the United States. But each state has their own set of mechanics, and it's depending upon what the schools want to pay for how many officials they're going to have. So I know that the finances definitely plays a part in it, but we do have the flexibility away from the NFHS for the mechanics. And I think here in New Jersey, I think our mechanics manual is fantastic. And the one thing that you made the mention of, every mechanic has a mechanic for you to be safe, with the exception of the U. The U's mechanic, when you're doing the proper mechanics, you're in the line of fire. And that's my biggest discrepancy to it. When we can go in the offensive backfield, we can try to make it work from there. Is it a change? Absolutely. Will there be some pushback? 100%. Will it be more work? Yeah, I've heard this from many people that it's more work being back where we are. Physically, it's more work. But I'm willing to put in the physical work personally. I'm willing to put in the personal work if it's going to keep me safer.
Mike, I've actually had this conversation with a few umpires that told me, listen, this is gonna make me not do umpire. This is going to be so much work for me that physically it's going to persuade me from making a decision as maybe not to officiate. And my listen, I get that, and I feel bad about it. But the truth of the matter is, we all need to have some kind of physical ability to be able to do all the positions. I mean, and that a physical level for our for what we do should be expected.
Yep. And I'm gonna. I know right now I'm gonna stereotype, but if you look in the high school officiating world, your umpire tends to be the biggest official out on the field. It's just kind of the nature of the beast, which then in turn puts us at, for some people, not as mobile, not as agile. Where in your scenario, you are definitely a much more athletic looking individual, and I'm saying that with air quotes, but I know that you're athletic. But some of the people are a little bit older, don't move as well, and now we're putting them in the line of fire, and that's just making their lives a little bit more dangerous. But then consequently, they don't want to go to the offensive backfield because they're bigger officials. They don't move as well, and it is going to be a lot more physical work of getting up, spotting the ball, getting into those scrums, different things like that, and then backpedaling back to 15 yards. So I know that that's one of the biggest pushbacks, is the more work that needs to go into that.
Yeah.
But I love what you said. I think we should be able to physically officiate, period, no matter what position you put me at. I know right now I can still work the sidelines. I know I can work the deep wing position. I know that I can work the R and I can work the U. And my thought process is, I coached for 20 some odd years. I know how hard these kids are working. I know how many hours those coaches are putting in away from their families, away from their own kids, and the kids, the blood, the sweat, the tears that they've put into the game. I want to give them the best of my ability. So if I got to do some training in order to get ready for the season, I'm going to do that. I'm going to go out and start running a little bit earlier in the season. Running ref is who my episode is with tomorrow. Running ref, we talked about just the overall fitness level of referees and improving our fitness level and improving our injury prevention. I think this goes right in line with injury prevention just by taking you out of the line of fire. So, thoughts on that?
No, listen, that's exactly my point. My point is, if we all are in better shape, we're all able to move better. The other thing is we're going to be able to heal better. If you take care of your body, we all know this. I'm not saying anything that anyone on this podcast doesn't know. If if you're taking care of your body's going to take care of you. And listen, the umpire is a very demanding position as it is. It's a very demanding and physical position. Yeah. At the deep wing, do I have to sprint and do I have to turn the jets on once in a while and try to keep up with those kids and never get beat to the goal line, which I don't, by the way. Listen, but the odds of someone running into me or hitting me, I'm more likely to have that happen in one of my other sports than as a deep wing. And
Yep.
I hate to say it, but that was one of the reasons I went back to deep wing, was because I felt, I unfortunately, and I love football with everything I have. I love football. I cannot put myself back in the position I was in 4 or 5 years ago with this leg. I just can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
It means not officiating the other sports in the spring and time away from things that I have to do and commitments. And Mike, the other thing I wanted to touch on before and I didn't was, and I get a lot of questions about this, especially when it comes to the insurances. A lot of us pay for NASO. NASO is I still take it every year. It's in my opinion, it's worth the money. But a lot of officials they're under the misconception that there is some kind of injury liability insurance there, some kind of medical coverage, and there's not. That is strictly, the legality of somebody gets hurt if you're doing a game and someone steps in a hole, or there's a bad judgment in a game and you're being sued. That type of stuff it will protect you from almost anything that can happen to you as an official, except your personal injury. And most people don't understand that. And listen, you want to go, for those of us that people have their own business. No, if you had to go out and pay for your own medical insurance to be an official, you would be thousands of dollars in the red every year. That's just not going to happen.
So I got a couple things from the chat board that I've kind of thrown up here. First one was from Brett. Mostly you here love it. Only worked worked it in a scrimmage thus far, but it makes sense of having helping both teams be out of the way, which is definitely something because, again, my many years of coaching, I used to teach on the mesh route. Use that umpire as a pick.
Absolutely.
Then we got Jason here. I posted his up there. He's been a U for about 10 years. After 10 years on the sidelines, loves being in the mix with the defense. Yeah, he's been hit, and he says he's dislocated his shoulder this year in week number 4. And then the last one I just posted up there was Jeff. I don't know, let me make sure I posted up there. Jeff works in Washington State, and they do offer personal injury insurance. And these, again, are all valid points. And going back, I want to touch back on what Jason was saying. I agree with you. I love being in the middle of the field and being in the mix with the defense.
Awesome.
I love having that. And we've talked about it so many different times on the podcast about preventative officiating. And I think that's one of the number one things that I love about the sport and being on the field as opposed to on the sideline is I do a lot more preventative officiating of being in the mix with the defense. But I've talked now with people from different states, from Washington. I've talked to a female official that I had on one of my earlier episodes, Kat Conti. She was an umpire in the UFL, and she loved it. And she's on the taller side for a female. She's 5'9", I think she said. I'm probably off with that. But she's like, there's no way I would be on the defensive side being in the middle of it where, all right, I'm sprinting in, I'm getting the ball spotted, I'm moving and moving and doing all that stuff. She's like, but I'm still involved in the game. They're still hearing my voice on every single play. So it's not making that much of a difference, excuse me, than being on the defensive side of the ball. It's just taking an extra second in order to get there. So that was her take on it. And coming from somebody who's working at that high level, it's something that I kind of took and like, oh, okay, I could see a definite point with that. So, all right, I got another one here from Jeff. 30th year in officiating this season, 20 plus as an umpire. Changed last year, requiring the ump to be in the offensive backfield. And Jeff says he's not a fan. So, Jeff, if you don't mind popping back on, if you get an opportunity, what are your negatives for being there? And again, we're just giving opinions here, so nobody's right or wrong. So, what are your thoughts on why you're not a fan of it, and why you're typing? Another one that I have heard of is again, spotting the ball for hurry up offenses. They say that it could potentially slow down the pace of the game. And again, I could see that being an issue if the umpire is not hustling. I've also seen umpires on the defensive side of the backfield
Absolutely.
not hustle. I mean, I listen. I've seen officials. I don't want to say umpire. I've seen referees that aren't moving as well. Deep wing guys that are stationary. Short wing guys that are so far behind on getting the spot. We're working cross field mechanics so often, and that's unfortunately the negative aspect of where we are right now, because we don't have the number of officials that we need to across the country.
I'm glad you said it.
So Jeff's answer was loss of contact and communication with the lineman and loss of angles for the illegal blocks and holds. So again, Jeff, the one thing, talking with other people, and again, you're working it now, so you have the experience over something that I don't, because I haven't worked in that spot other than as an R. A lot of people are saying that you can see the holds a lot clearer because you're seeing that tug, you're seeing that restriction on the defensive side where you got a cleaner angle because you're not avoiding. And that's one of the things that I've always talked to with communicating with the defenses. Mr. Official, I was being held. And I one time had an answer. I'm like, well, tell your 3 tech to stop getting driven back into me and I'll call it for you because I can't see it because I'm looking to get out of the way. So it's just something that, again, I'm spitfiring here and throwing stuff back and forth at you. But that's just another opinion that I have. So we got Brett here once again. Brett saying, I think 7-man mechanics should put the U in the offensive backfield. 5 and 4, keep it on D. I don't disagree with you there, Brett. I don't. And for us here in New Jersey, we have 3-man mechanics for our sub-varsity games, some 4-man mechanics depending upon the school and if they're willing to pay. And in that scenario, having that cross-field mechanic between the R and the U does make sense. But one thing we have done here in New Jersey is in our sub-varsity games, our U is in the offensive backfield. We jokingly around call him the rumfaree. He's the ref and the umpire at the same time. So we're working on spots and different things like that on our 3-man mechanics. A lot of states are still 5-man mechanics for their varsity games, and I could see how that could be a little bit tougher because it does put a dead area out there. John, when you were umping, were you solely on a 6-man crew?
Yes. I think of just about every single game. We only, our chapter is very sparingly doing 5-man games these days, and I don't believe any of them were. But yeah, I'm pretty sure they were all 6-man games.
Okay. So now when I came up where I was working a mix of both, and like I said, John got to experience my first varsity game on the field, and I was in a 5-man game, and I was the back judge in the 5-man game, and it's definitely a different perspective back there. But it's also something that, depending on how the mechanics get set up, that back judge can actually help on the defensive holding aspect. They're the ones that are going to see the defensive side holdings by your defensive linemen, the tug and pulls and different things like that to open up the gaps. That back judge is able to see that, especially on a run game, where as a U, I'm sometimes not picking that up because of where my focus is. So sometimes I do miss that defensive holding from the position that I'm at, where having that deep guy could benefit it. So that's just another thought process.
Mike,
Um,
that's a great point, Mike. If you remember, you left that crew, and I went and took your spot the following year, and the next year or two, on that crew. I that was our only 5-man crew at the time,
that's right.
and I can tell you, you know, inside the alley and that kind of. Listen, when you're in 6-man mechanics as a back judge, you're not throwing any holding flags for the most part up on that line. In 5-man on a running play, especially on a sweep or a toss, absolutely. You have a great view of what's going on, tackle to tackle almost, and if it's down out in the alley, you're going to see things that the wing can't get through to see. You're going to throw a lot more for holding flags, you know, than a 6-man. That's for darn sure.
Yep. And so B. Nystrom put on the chat, as a former linebacker, I love being on the defensive side. The thrill of the hole opening up in front of me makes it worth it. And B, I agree with you. And as a former offensive lineman, I loved seeing those holes. I'm sitting there in my mind, I'm calling out plays. I'm like, all right, here comes power because I'm seeing it develop. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, crap, here comes that running back right at me. And I swear to you, I once had a young man, phenomenal running back. He ran for over 1,000 yards for 4 seasons. Um, they ran a power play that opened up so much. I swear I saw him smiling underneath his mouthpiece because he was running straight for me and he was using me as a pick. He was running directly at me, and when he got to me, he was going to put his foot in the ground and make a cut, knowing that I was going to protect him from a linebacker or two. And at the time, I was 250 pounds, so I ended up seeing him a couple weeks later outside of the field, and I'm like, I know what you did there, and he just started laughing. I'm like, oh. So yeah, that is something though. And B, again, I'm an old offensive lineman. I'm comfortable being in the middle of the field. That's where I used to coach. But on the coaching aspect of it during practice, I had more control over the different variables that were around me as opposed to being out there in the middle of a game where these kids are absolutely flying around. So it is something that I still enjoy being in there. I still enjoy the view from being in there. I'm not going to lie about that. But I'm just trying to think of long term, in my opinion. Um, so, John, here's another question, and I know we kind of touched on it before. You're done with being an umpire. You won't go in the
Unfortunately,
middle. You won't go in the middle of the field anymore.
so I
Do
can
you?
tell you this. This year, I wound up doing a youth game, and I I really had to go into for reasons. I had to go in, and I did the U in the game, and it was the first time since. And don't you know it? I take the proverbial helmet to the back of the ribs. Just some kid not watching where he was going, whacked me in the ribs, and listen, it hurt for 2 or 3 weeks. But you know what? I'm not gonna lie. When I was back in there, I was like, boy, this is where it's at. This is what I want to do again. And I, kept driving home in the car. I'm like, what are you nuts? What are you crazy? Like, unfortunately for me, it's just, like I said, I as much as I loved it, I couldn't put myself back in that, back in that position again.
Yep. So now I'm putting this out there to you, John, and for the people that are still with us on the live chat. How many of your crewmates, how many of your people in your association or on your crew, when you say, well, why don't you go and be the umpire? And they're like, no way, man. What are you, nuts? I ain't going in there.
Yeah.
Because I know I hear it often.
But you know what, too? And I'm sure you see this. I'm sure we all see it. A lot of times you'll get people that will say, and I don't really understand the thought process, but you'll have, oh, you're a big guy. You should be an umpire. or you're too small, or I'm too small to be an umpire. See, for me, you know what? It doesn't make any sense. Just because you're a big guy doesn't mean you're not going to get knocked down. You're not going to bust your leg. You're not going to get hurt. And let's be fair. Just because you're not an umpire doesn't mean you're not going to get hurt.
Correct.
You and I both know people that, have been short wings and been leg whipped and broke their legs, and, things like that happen. But just to go back, there are things that, we can do that I think that we do in other positions with the umpire. And to defend the people who say maybe we can't see the angles, or maybe we can't see what we could see from back there. And listen, this isn't about me; it's about my fellow officials. I don't want to see anybody get hurt. And to me, if it means maybe we can't see as well, but we're going to be safer, that's what we would do for the players, right? If it was something, if we were going to compromise something in a game to make a player safer, that's what we would do. And unfortunately, I don't think it's the same way for the people who wear the stripes.
And we've seen it with the rule changes, with the targeting, with the defenseless receivers and different things like that. And again, I'm 50 years old, and people that I talk to, we always say, the game's not what it was when we played the game. The highlight reel hits that you watch on the old school NFL reels, well, probably 99% of those are now illegal hits today because they're
Right.
making the game safer. And do I agree with all of them? It took me a while to kind of get to that side, but yeah, I do agree with it because it's overall we want to build the game. We want the game to continue to grow. We want it to be safer. And that's actually the other angle that I was leaning towards. I think having the U in the offensive backfield, I think we'd be able to get more officials. I do, because you're not pigeonholing that position to be the bigger person, to be the older person, which is, again, I know that I'm stereotyping here because you and I both know smaller, agile officials that are the U, but it's few and far between. I think we'd be able to get and retain more officials. And I think where we're talking about, it's a lot more running. Well, now I think we'd be able to get a side judge or a short wing to come in and be a U because they might be a little bit more nimble and more apt to running. Well, maybe now they'd be willing to be the U and run a little bit more up and down the field. And I've got no problems going back to the sidelines. Yeah, I love being in the middle. I love the communication part. And let me throw Jeff's quote up here. It does take a special person to work the U on the defensive backfield, but the biggest part is the communicator. And Jeff, I don't disagree with that whatsoever. But that also comes into play on the sidelines. If you can't communicate with the coaches on the sidelines, you're making it a much harder job for you in that scenario too. So let's see. Jeff, again, we moved our bigger, older U's to a head lineman as now they have the ineligible downfield responsibility and they hold the line of scrimmage. That's exactly the point. Let's get them out of harm's way in the middle of the field because the bigger and older they are, and again, I'm getting there myself, and I was the bigger one at the time, it's putting us at a disadvantage. We're more stagnant. We're not able to move as well as we used to. And I want to, for those people that are watching, I'm still working on and I'm still receiving clips from all over the country of umpires getting hit and getting struck. And I'm sure if I posted the question on Facebook, I would get it at the different positions too. But this is definitely a higher rate of injury at the U position than any other position out on the field. And that's my biggest thing is our safety overall as officials. So I do have here, I want to play a couple more clips here of some interesting visuals here. Excuse me. Okay, so this one here is Kentucky versus Alabama. So you can see it happens on all levels. And goodness, I think that's Derrick Henry right there. And this you should get credit for the tackle on that one. He pops right back up, but took some wallops there. All right, we got another one coming here. This one is a high school game. and this guy got absolutely railroaded. And for those people that sent me the clips, I apologize. I don't have the names written down of the particular clips, but people were telling me, um, if I remember correctly with this clip, this person was severely concussed, and they were out for an extended period of time and still dealing with the concussion that went along with it. And if you see it, that running back and linebacker just beeline straight for him, and the running back cut off him. The linebacker didn't make the cut. Got just two more here that I'm going to show. Again, we got a spread formation. This looks like a Division III game, I think, here. Little screen over the middle. The U's getting out of the way, and he gets undercut from behind. And I think this ended up being another broken leg type of scenario. So again, can it happen anywhere on the field? 100% yes, and I will never downplay that for anybody. But can we make it safer in general for us? That's where my opinion comes into play. Some people don't like it, some people do. It's just an opinion that we're opening up discussion about. So, John, the last thing that I want to talk about with you, and I've got you on here, we're getting close to the 50-minute mark with our delay game, as it was called earlier, with the technical difficulties. But let's talk about official safety in general, off the field. I know you recently had an incident where something happened off the field. I forget what sport it was, but this is also something that sometimes gets not really taken into consideration, but the off-field potential incidents that we're dealing with as officials. Do you mind sharing your story?
No, not at all. And listen, especially anybody that's been doing this for a long time, or somebody that does, like I do, refs all year round, or is doing multiple sports. It's only a matter of time before these things happen. And the way I refer to them now is workplace violence. And it sounds dramatic and drama, but if you really think about it, some of the things that we're exposed to or that we're expected to deal with on a weekly basis, I'm not going to say daily basis because we know that's not true, could never happen in someone else's place of work. And when it took me years to really think about it like this, but let's face it, when we're officiating, we're working. That's our workplace. And what I can tell you is, and we've all had this stuff, listen, I've been spit on. I've had things thrown in my car or whatever. I've had people, and listen, most of the people that are out there listening tonight, I'm sure have had these instances. I've been followed home from games and that kind of stuff. But I was at a high school that will remain nameless, and I had parents waiting for me in the parking lot, waiting at the gate after a game where numerous parents were told that they had to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And they did, but leaving the field means we're going to sit at the gate and wait at the parking lot. Where I went into the parking lot, I was called. Basically, the person I was with, my partner, was really he was really the brunt of it. But I was called a coward for going to my car. Like I'm going to fight these people. I'm a 50-year-old guy. I wasn't fighting anybody 20 years ago. I'm sure as hell not fighting anybody now. Having cups thrown at my car and that kind of stuff. And listen, we've all experienced it. But now that we're talking about it, people say it's happening more and more frequently. I do believe these things are happening more and more frequently. Um, and I think that what we need to do, and listen, early on in my officiating career, I would just move on. I would just
Mm-hmm.
say, you know what, it is what it is. It doesn't bother me, and I'd go home. Like I said, I had a woman spit at me after a football game one time. And to this day, I can't believe that I didn't address it, that I didn't, report her or take it to the next level. But unfortunately, I really do feel like it's becoming more and more acceptable. Youth sports is something we've always said is out of control. Like everybody says, youth sports is blood money. We all know the taglines, and a lot of it's said jokingly. But unfortunately, high school sports now are, we're seeing a change.
Yeah. And I could say I've only had to deal with it one particular time in my high school officiating career because I got to say 99% of the time there are police officers in the area, at the field, at the gates, different things like that. Or you're going to get an administrator giving you an escort to the locker room and then back. But it's sometimes from the locker room to your car, like you were talking about that. All of a sudden, they're still out there, and the police have now dispersed, or the administrators have now dispersed. But I
Yep.
definitely feel that at the youth level, it got a little bit more out of control than it did at the high school level because at the youth level, you got volunteer moms and dads that are working security, quote unquote. Okay. There's probably not a uniformed officer on site to help deal with the situation that could potentially arise. And if they're typically on call that they may have to take off for another emergency down the road. Um, so it's just something that, again, we're talking about official safety in general, on the field, off the field. It's just something that it is a minority. It is a small group of it that it's happening to, or that are involved with it. But it's just something that I think we should open up the discussions for and try to figure out ways that we can make it safer for us as officials, because I love this sport and I want more officials to get involved in the sport. And again, 10 years of officiating, one time I could say that it happened to me at the high school level. So it's not often. But in today's world, especially with social media, when that one incident does occur, it blows up on social media. So it has a major negative effect. And if it doesn't get shut down, then, well, then people think it's acceptable. So,
Mike, one of the things that I find interesting as a multi-sport official is when we go to a football game, not all the schools, maybe 99% of schools will give us primo parking away from everybody else. Let us get in, let us get out. We do have police officers 99% of the time.
yep,
In the games that I work for, our chapter, I feel that the schools do a good job. But listen, this is whistle talk, and I have a whistle in my other sports, and it always amazes me that in the other sports I do, that none of that is the case.
yeah,
That there's no, you get to park in a special area. You get to there's no law enforcement at the games, and are the crowds a lot smaller at the other sports that I do? Sure, they are, but I'm amazed at the fact that a lot of the majority of what I've experienced, except for the spitting incident, which was a football game, has been other sports where people are waiting outside, and yeah, you have to walk through a parking lot, or you have to walk your partner to their car because they're going after your partner. And I'm surprised it's not like that for all sports. That when we come out of a game, that someone doesn't say, "Hey, listen, we got you these spots here. You can
yep.
get the heck out of here if you have to." And someone's there. There's law enforcement. Maybe law enforcement can't be at every game, but it's very interesting how other sports are not treated as well as football officials.
This is true. This is true, and I've experienced it just from the teacher aspect of being involved in the sporting events and seeing it. And listen, I will tell you, the winter sports now, basketball and wrestling, are probably two of the worst with the
Yep.
officiating because the crowds, especially at a high profile game, they are right on top of you. Now, I'm not saying that they're always going to be bad, but at least we've got a fence and a track and a team to buffer between us on the football field as opposed to the fans, where when you're, especially a basketball game, you're running the sidelines, you're tripping over fans. I mean, heck, I joke around. I see the NBA officials knocking people's beer over on the $4,000 front row seats that they have for a New York Knicks game. But
Right.
that's how close the fans are to the basketball court. and they're paying for the experience, but they also think that they're paying, I'm talking NBA wise, but the people think that they have the right to berate you right then and there. And so it is something that is difficult to always handle. And it's a reminder to all the people that are out there, coaches, fans that might be listening. We're going home to our families too. We do have feelings. I know as it sounds soft, and John's a coward because he didn't fight somebody at a youth game one day, but it's life. This is not why we're looking to get involved in the sport. We're looking to get involved in the sport to make it a great experience for the kids. So let's all try to just keep that in the back of our minds, or even in the forefront of our minds. So, John, I think we've hit our time limit here.
Awesome.
Got a couple more things here on the board here. Let's see. Jeff says he sits on the board for one of the largest youth football games in the Pacific Northwest, and they have a zero tolerance for negative fan behavior directed at officials, and that they have shut down programs due to fan behavior. Jeff, I will say that from my perspective, that's a minority type of thing too, because I don't hear that often happening around the country. So for the fact that you guys are being preemptive with that and have the zero tolerance rule, that's awesome to hear. A lot of people talk about having a zero tolerance rule, but a lot of times it's not truly enforced. So the fact that you guys are doing that and enforcing it, kudos to you, Jeff. That's awesome to hear. And that's the way it should be. And I know we have our statement, let the players play, let the coaches coach, let the officials officiate. Let's all just be here and cheer people on. It's something that we need to, I guess, reiterate. And instead of us reading the card to the players each game, we should read it out to the parents and the stands a little bit more. Nope.
Well, accountability is everything. When people do something wrong and they're held accountable, other people can see that. When they're not held accountable, we all know what happens.
This is very true. So, John, once again, I would like to thank you for taking the time out. For the listeners that jumped onto our live show tonight, much appreciated that you were all on here and giving some feedback and some opinions. Again, no hard feelings. And listen, please hit me up on Facebook. Please hit me up. My email is mikedthereferee@gmail.com. I want to open up these conversations. For the people that have sent me other clips, and if I didn't give credit, I am still working on putting together a collaboration of the umpire injuries and different things like that. So I do appreciate the people that have sent me clips via Facebook or on email and different things like that. Once again, and lastly, if you're enjoying the show, hit those like buttons, hit those subscribe buttons. You got any suggestions for any other episodes, please hit me up. I'm always here to talk football with you. John, thank you again. I'm glad that you're back in the grind of everything again and doing your thing as awesome as you can do it, because I know you're a damn good official at what you do. So I thank you for that. And I'm going to say this bias too. John has also officiated some of my daughter's lacrosse games, so I know what John deals with and the crazy parents. No, I only ride them jokingly, but I appreciate what you do, John, and thank you for everything that you do.
Thanks for having me. Everybody have a great holiday season, and Mike, have a good night, and take care. I'll see you soon.
All right, buddy. Have a good night.